going on, guys? Today I am gonna pretty much give you all a quick rundown on how we do a full install of our 900X package. Ideally, this video is more based on how to install our turbo kit, but the fact that we're actually doing a full 900X package on this car, I thought it'd be a good idea to kind of just give y'all a little insight of what is involved in our package. Again, this is a 2018 plus Mustang. Now, we've already done a few of the mechanical side of things as far as disassembly goes. So basically, I'm just going to give y'all a rundown on how to actually install the kit, not necessarily how to disassemble the car to get it to that point, because I think mostly everybody that's buying or installing one of our turbo kits already knows how to do that and get to that point. So here we go. Alright, so the basics of everything on this deal is mainly to get all of the studs out and utilize the bolts provided with the kit. You can also do the install with studs, so it's entirely up to the end user. But basically, you know, we've removed headers, removed steering shaft. We are about to remove motor mounts and remove the starter on this side, obviously just to make it a tad bit easier. Now, you can work around with the starters, just for us, that's our preference. This car was provided to us with a Corsa exhaust and mid pipe. However, the old headers that he had utilized the mid pipes as well, so we are going to be building mid pipes for this one. Our kit comes with down pipes to about right here. Now, that is left that way, one, because it's an off-road use only kit. Two is because it allows for any aftermarket mid pipes to connect to it, but now again, that's all on the end user's side. However, we can build connection pipes, but at this time we're not going to. This plastic here will get removed because that's the route we go, and that's the route we take to install fuel lines. So our fuel lines will be coming from basically here. They're gonna come and follow the factory or the factory brake lines and the factory components that are under this plastic here. And once said and done, you'll never see, or you'll never really notice that there's a fuel system routed through there. So motor mount bracket is out, steering shaft is out, and the top sensor right there is the oil pressure sensor. So what we're going to do is something new, something that doesn't come or doesn't get included in the kits at this point. But it just recently came out and I just found it, and it's a pretty cool deal to make this thing a little bit easier. Now I got something pretty cool, and let's give you guys a look on that. So this is something that I plan on providing with the kit. This is basically an adapter that's going to be able to screw in and pretty much tee off of that fitting, the one that I just showed y'all for the oil pressure sensor. This is my first time using this, and let's see how it works out with our kit. We might have to change a few things as far as the oil line goes, but for the most part, this will make it a lot easier and not have to drill and tap the housing, which drilling and tapping the housing is probably one of the better ways to go about it. But if we can, you know, get a lock in on some pieces of, you know, from these guys, I think this is a power by the hour unit. There's a part number right there, so if you already have the kit or if you're in the process of installing it, you can purchase this adapter. From 2022, we are going to be making some changes to our turbo kit, same as parts that come with it and different ways of offering the kit. So this will probably be an option on the website, and then from there you can either go this route or drill and tap the housing. So at this point, the driver's side header is removed, and we're about to start the process to get the driver's side header installed, just to make sure all that clears and kind of show you guys how that works. But at the same time, it's probably the best time to do so now is to do the oil feed and drilling and tapping on the housing, or using the adapter that I will show you guys in this video. Just right now is probably the best time to do so, just because you know you have ability to access all of that as well. Also, you can do that as well whenever you are doing your oil pump gears. So it just really depends on, you know, if you want to do this part first, take the housing off right here since it's easier, or doing it while you're doing your oil pump gears. Here's that adapter fully installed with the line installed. This line right here will go into the T for the oil feed line. So I just kind of wanted to show you guys so you can get a better idea of that adapter. Like I said, this is the first time I'm ever using this adapter. Normally I run the drill and tap on the housing on the bottom, and it actually utilizes the 45 degree down there to shoot a straight fitting out towards the T. But this is what worked on this one, and we're obviously, you know, testing this thing out to see if it's gonna work best with our kit. Here is our oil line kit. It's obviously the dash 10 oil lines, dash 10 hose ends, a Y, a few 45s, a few 90s, and a few straights. These fittings here are for the turbos on top. That bag right there with the 4 fittings, that's for the check valve, and that one right there is for the fittings that go into the housing. For some reason, I think this one had provided with 2. Not sure exactly why that happened, but that'd be something that we can adjust now that we've seen it. Here's our check valves. They are directional. Pretty much it has an arrow here to tell you which way the flow needs to go. Alright. This longer line here, that one is off the T's going to the passenger side turbo check valve. The shorter one is for the driver side, going to the driver side turbo off the check valve, or to the check valve, sorry. And then these 2 right here go off the top of the turbo. I will show you guys how I install those to make it a lot easier. Alright guys, so here's a good look of the passenger side header fully installed. Of course, this is without the motor mount bracket, but this right here kind of shows you what needs to be removed or out of the way so you can get this header installed. It's definitely a little tricky to get all the bolts from the top and the bottom, but make sure you always start all of the header bolts in before you go to start tightening any of them. That's just a good way to assure that everything goes in the way it's supposed to, as far as in the threads and all of that. A lot of times as well, it's also a good idea to chase the threads. This is a pretty new car, so the threads weren't all that bad. Luckily, it did have header, so people had installed stuff on here before. But yeah, for the most part, that's it. Those both headers installed. Now we'll get the motor mount bracket back into this side and move on to the next step. So here we've loosened up the housing bolts on both sides and kind of guesstimated on how we needed to clock the housings, and then just kind of tossed it up there just to get a quick test fit. Normally that's what I do. I go ahead and leave them a little loose, clock it somewhat where it needs to be, and then just slightly snug one of the exhaust side ones and one of the cold side ones, and then just kind of leave it that way. It doesn't have too much movement around, or it doesn't have too much movement around on it. So now we can go ahead and get to the part where we put the fitting on the turbo. So this one being the driver's side, I've ran it both ways. So this is, you know, kind of like a personal preference on how you want to run your lines. Ideally, it's pretty much designed to go towards the transmission housing on the driver's side with a little bit of kickback. So it kind of almost sits like this to clear the transmission housing and also to clear all the exhaust stuff. You could do it this way, but you would have to put some sort of heat sleeve on it. If not, you can also do it this way, so the lines is still long enough to get to it with the check valve and everything there. The way I do these fittings, I do not put Teflon on them. These, you do not put Teflon. Teflon gets in there and it could be a bad deal. So what I use a very slight dab of Loctite. Loctite red, very small amount, or Loctite blue, very small amount as well. And this will seal up. So I'll put this on there and then kind of show you guys how it looks once it's done. Because once this is on there, we'll also run one of the shorter lines on it, and that shorter line pretty much is what we run from the turbo to the check valve, or as small as you can as far as the size goes, and then from there we go to the check valve to the oil feed line pretty much. There is our fitting. We're gonna try to go towards the driver's side with the oil line, see how that works out. Hopefully we can hit that on the first try. If not, like I said, I usually do it the opposite way, but I'm gonna try something a little bit different here, that way to kind of show you guys it can go both ways. So now we're at the wastegate process. The wastegate process is fairly simple, but I'll kind of give y'all some pointers on how I do it to try to get it, you know, set in there first try pretty much. So this is what's included in the wastegates. You know, your typical 45mm Hypergate Turbo Smart wastegate. It already comes included with the 7-pound spring. It's already installed, ready to go. The thing that kind of confuses some people is basically fittings, right? So it comes with a NPT plug and 2 vacuum ports, or 2 vacuum fittings. So what I normally do, since this is going to be the driver's side wastegate, I pretty much plug this one and put ports on these 2. Pretty basic stuff. The way I do it, I run my bottom port to each turbo. So my bottom port on this one is going to go right directly to the turbo housing, to the compressor cover. So that is going to be boost reference to the wastegate. The top one is what is actually being controlled by a boost controller. In this instance, we're actually doing the eBoost 2. So the eBoost 2 will pretty much go from here and then go to the other wastegate to that same port with a T, and that T goes to the 3-port MAC valve that comes with the boost controller. I'll show you guys that down the road. Alright, so turbo's in there on this side, pretty much the way we said. What I do here, I bend the transmission lines a little bit. It does take some finagling, but I bend the transmission lines enough to get the turbo sitting where it needs to be. Once it's all said and done, I will go ahead, once everything's kind of tight, and I'll bend it a little bit more. It's not that big of a deal that it's close to the exhaust housing. If you want to, you know, you can do a AN adapter there with AN lines and fittings, you know, with some nice heat sleeve and stuff. But if not, this is what I normally do, and this is what I recommend if you don't want to do the AN lines. Oh, there goes the light. But if you know, if you're not okay with this, then, you know, it's kind of one of those, it's up to the end user on how they want to do it. On this side, we're actually gonna do the wastegate before the downpipe. I've already kind of used the downpipe to clock myself to where, quote unquote, it needs to be. That's what I normally do. I get it up there nice and loose, get, you know, our AN drain flange, pretty much, I'd say, our drain flange nice and level. That I usually like to use a actual, like a angle finder or whatnot, just to make sure it's nice and flat and at 0 degrees. I try to do that on both. Works out really well. If worst case, you can kind of clock it downwards, not upwards. Upwards will cause the thing to start smoking. But yeah, so basically this is it. I will get the wastegate. Our wastegate is designed to run this way. Dump tube is gonna come on this side. So that's how I route mine, and those are the ports that I use for vacuum lines. Alright, so all hot side is pretty much in and installed all the way. Here is how the driver's side sits. And here's the passenger side. Originally this kit was designed around the factory K-member, so sometimes when you guys get this kit and the charge pipe on the passenger side is a little weird, it's technically because it was designed around this. So that's kind of what we built it around, just because at the time when we first designed this kit there wasn't any K-members available, but now there is an option as far as K-members go, and you can utilize our same charge pipe, but you can also kind of turn the turbo a little bit more and clock it kind of further down so it can fit tighter as far as the charge pipe goes. Here is our oil lines. They're fully installed already as well. There's a check valve, and this is how we route it to the Y. And this is the other side oil feed with the check valve. Check valves are a must. Doesn't matter what you read online, doesn't matter what Precision says, this is how it works. I will show y'all how I run my return lines, and that is the only way I know my return line kit works. If by any reason you want to kind of do it your own way as far as the return lines go, I can't guarantee the fact that it's going to work properly. This kit was designed around the way I did the return lines and did the feed lines, and it works every time. Now this is how we set up the wastegate. Wastegate dumps go right there, and if you notice, it gives you a nice room to get to the vacuum lines. I'll run these vacuum lines, I'll run them over, kind of just loop them and tuck them through here, and then have them come around wherever they need to go. As far as these go, pretty much the same thing. I'll run them over and route them this way in line with the check valve, and then tee off from there. I'll show y'all that part here in a little bit. But basically, this is the hot side completely installed and ready to go. So, scavenge pump is mounted, lines are routed as far as the oil return, and here is what I do to return to the front cover. I normally mark that and do that whenever we tear apart the front end for the scavenge pump, but you can also drill and tap that or weld a bung, however you like. I've done it before without removing everything. It's just a super careful process. Basically utilizing the drill bit specifically for that thread. That's an actual 1/4 inch thread. And what I do, I pretty much grease up the tip of the drill bit like a ton to catch all the shavings, and then tap it. Once it's tapped, obviously you can get that fitting in there and put a nice sealant on it and call it a day. I usually will spray inside of there with brake parts cleaner a little bit, not a lot, just a slight amount, and then do an oil change on it. Usually I've done it, it's been effective and it's worked. I've never had issues, but that's all on the end user if that's how they want to do it. Or you could return it back to the oil pan, but however you want. Alright, so here is how my oil return lines are assembled. This is how I do it. This is my personal preference, and this is what I know works. The long line there goes straight to the driver's side turbo, 90 off of the passenger side turbo into the Y. And normally I mount this Y, I mean I don't mount it, but I route it on the compressor side, the AC compressor side, pretty close to the transmissions, or run parallel with the transmissions. And then this line here goes directly to the scavenge pump. Here we are to our next step. We pretty much pulled the intake off to eliminate the IMRCs, which those are like it's a variable intake runner design that Ford has, but we get rid of that once we go boosted, and we kind of make our own little plates for it. Here it is, our plate. Super simple deal. I mean, you can do this at home. It's just a simple 1/8" plate with 3 holes on each one of them. Yeah, but we just do that to avoid any kind of vacuum interference or anything going on there with once you actually start pressurizing the system. So we clean the intake really well. A lot of times these Coyotes are huge on getting dust, getting all kinds of stuff inside or around it. So we clean that as much as we can, and then we also try to clean around the port as much as we can. I mean, this one here had tons of dirt and stuff everywhere, so we try to do that just to keep for a clean install, you know. So here's an engine bay, pretty much ready to be assembled. Real soon there'll be a nice clean install. So we've kind of installed all the cold side piping and did all the modifications that we needed to do to get everything on here. This specific customer wants the bumper support on it, so we went ahead and put that back on there. Not to mention, it has this deal. This is, as many Mustangs I've done, this is the first time I've seen one of these. This is a fully loaded car, but I'm not 100% sure what it is. So that actually bolts back onto the bumper support, so we went ahead and put that back on there. But as you can see, this is how our updated intercooler fits. It's a bit on the tight side all the way around, just because it's a bigger core, but there's adjustability as far as the mount goes to get it to where you need to, where it needs to be. If you can see, like, this stuff is really close there. We could probably lower it, but that's perfectly fine where it's at. I've ran it like that plenty of times because this deal pulls up, so you should be good there. Another thing too with this intercooler setup and where our blow-off valve is mounted, we have to do a little bit of trimming. You have to trim right there to get the blow-off valve to clear, which, you know, it's not much, but it's something that needs to be done. That's one. Another thing too, what I do is I actually trim the factory K-member right here. I take about 2 inches off of that to get it to clear the charge pipe and the coupler and all of that. You probably can get away with just trimming around it, but I do that just to be on the safe side. So here's the cold side pipe. We are doing some updates on this charge pipe here. We've changed a few things as far as the coupler that we're running. We finally found a coupler that works really well, and I'll show you that in a bit. But you can just see how nice the piping sits now. This intercooler, we ran it on, you know, on mid-low 7-second cars. Obviously we run methanol on them just to keep the cooling and IATs down, but this thing works great. I am super happy with this updated core that we're using. Obviously it took a little bit for us to get it right, but here's that. And I mean, just tough to say, but just check it out. Like, I take my time and I take a lot of pride in welding our intercoolers and welding our cold side stuff, our hot side stuff. I mean, just check it out. I'll show y'all a little bit of it just so you can kind of get an idea. But like, now if you're already turboed and you're just watching this and it's not my kit, go outside and check out your car and tell me if the weld work and the fitment and everything on yours is as good as this one. I mean, that's what we pride ourselves in, and I literally weld every single one of my intercoolers myself, so that'll tell you, you know, like what goes into it. I take a lot of pride in it. Another thing, we route the harness that goes on the bumper support here. We route this harness on top of the condenser, as you can see there, and it works out really well. Obviously it gets a little tight on this end of it, but it works out. And man, a lot of cars are different. Sometimes we have to trim right here and sometimes we don't. This one actually fit really well, really close, but it's, you know, nothing to worry about. This is the new coupler we got built. Let me get some light. It was really hard to find a coupler that'll actually work and it's not gonna, you know, do nothing crazy. But this is a specific degree coupler to fit how we want it to fit, specifically on the factory K-member stuff. This is how we route all our vacuum lines, so you can kind of see how everything goes. This is going to the boost solenoid. I still need to pull that wire in a tad bit, but you know, we use DTM connectors on everything. And then this is how I do just about all of them. Mid-mount stuff, this is where the boost solenoid mounts. We obviously trim there to get the power wire for the fuel system through, a vacuum line for the boost controller through, and then the wires for the boost solenoid through. Here you can kind of see where our Y sits. Let's see if you can see that. But yeah, that's our Y right there. And then that's the line there. And it goes to our scavenge pump. Here's the way it's completed underneath the car. Wastegate, vacuum lines go here. We have this off because we're about to run the fuel system. But if you can tell, you know, I run the vacuum lines through there, bring them out this ways, and then tie everything together with the oil lines. This is our main line that goes and tees off to the boost solenoid. So I got a T here. So I got a T here, and then that vacuum line comes up and routes over the wastegate, and this is where the wastegate lines are on this side, as you can see there. But that's basically how we route that. Here's our O2 sensor on this side. We did a little bit of trimming here to clear the charge pipe so we wouldn't have to worry about it. In the instructions you'll see that there's a specific deal that says for us to trim that. So you can kind of see literally like we trimmed that just to clear the pipe a little bit. Same on the other side. We did it just for safety measures to clear the charge pipe as well. Scavenge pump mount. This is going to be provided now. I stopped providing them just because everybody was going to an aftermarket K-member, and it was kind of like you know, you're on your own on that part. But now we started getting these brackets, and basically what's going to happen here, like if you see, this is how we mount it to the factory K-member. But what we're going to do, we're going to send it without holes in them, and then you can pretty much drill 2 holes here and pass through on the K-member to get, you know, this bolted through on the chromoly pipe or the round tubing that they use for the K-members, and that'll work really nice as well. This is how I route my lines. Like, this what works every time. This is a straight fitting here to a 90. If you can tell, this is perfectly level, but I actually tilt the 90 just a tad bit down, just so it won't, you know, get caught up in or backed up into the turbo, because that's what actually makes these things smoke. People don't realize it, but that's what makes these things smoke. When you shut off the car, all the oil that's in the feed line goes back into the turbo and stays there. So what it'll do, it'll seep past the exhaust system, and whenever you go to fire the car up, boom, you get white exhaust, you know. So that's pretty much what we do there. Filters fit up really nice. They're a little bit tough to get in when that's the last thing you do, but they fit nice. Same like on this side. They fit nice, they work. And this is literally a kit I took off the shelf and installed on this car. So this is basically what I send out. Sometimes I do have a little complaints, but a lot of the times it's mainly install. You know, getting the stuff to fit up and line up properly is always, you know, a big priority, and it's up to the end user because this thing has a lot of flexibility as far as twisting the turbos or, you know, getting everything clocked properly. Normally what I do, I leave the exhaust housing V-band slightly loose and allow the downpipe to line everything up. Once the downpipe is lined up and routed how it needs to be, boom, everything fits and lines up perfect. Want to know something that's super cool on our kit that people don't realize that is what they're paying for? For one, when you disassemble this thing, you got to pull trans out, you got to do converter, whatever the case is with either the 10R, if you got a power glide, whatever the case is. The main thing here is that you can just unbolt the V-band, get the turbos off, unbolt the wastegate. Sometimes you don't even have to remove the driver's side wastegate, but you don't have to remove no headers or anything like that to get the transmissions out. That's a huge thing. I mean, realize how long it'll take us to remove a header just to get the transmission out. That's huge, you know. And I took that into consideration when we were building these kits. Like, a lot of that stuff I really think about and make sure, you know, everything works out for the end user and for everybody that's, you know, playing with this stuff. So that's just one of the things that I look for and that I do. What I do, I leave even the center section and the compressor housings loose to get everything lined up where it needs to be. On the factory K-member, you can see it looks like it's touching, but there's enough space there to have a little bit of wiggle room. But if you want to get crazy with it, you can also notch this to be able to get the turbo to clearance that as well. And I'm not gonna lie, I've even notched these things completely off here and gotten rid of that on both sides, gotten rid of that on the factory K-member, and it's worked out and it works really well. I mean, we've been, you know, 790s if I'm not mistaken in the GT350, and that's what we did on that one when we put the bigger turbo stuff on there. Alright guys, as you can see here, here's our complete fuel system for our 900X package. The 4 Innovations dual pump system includes fuel rails, ID 1050X injectors, dual pumps, nice AN line, nice fittings, nice filter, and all the bells and whistles. And then here's our charge pipes. I have mixed feelings as far as a polished charge pipe goes. A lot of times I'll do a brush finish. I just think it looks a little cleaner, but some people like the polish, so I will try to continue using the polished stuff. It's just hard to get that material right now. Here's how I route my vacuum lines. So I get rid of everything that's up front. We obviously did the IMRC delete, but this right here, brake booster line, I take off one of the fittings that's on the factory stuff. I literally get the hard line off and utilize the rubber hose and go directly to that. It's a really nice way to do that, to keep it nice and clean. Then here, this is another one, same thing. I get the plastic off of that, and then we route this line, this 3/8 line. It's tough to put on a Dash 8, but I like to do it because it looks nice and clean and simple. And then that goes to our vacuum block. Super simple way to do the vacuum block. This is how I like it. It's nice, it's clean. Obviously the Gen 3 stuff on this side is always real like cluttered with a bunch of lines and stuff. So I do it on this side and try to make it look as clean as possible. So our vacuum block, we get that and we mount it up on the plastic here that bolts up to the 18 intake. Works out really nice. And then we run our vacuum lines here. This one, blow-off valve, routes with the harness and goes directly to the blow-off valve. This one right here goes through the back, follows all the lines back there. So this one right here goes through the back, follows all the lines back there, goes around to where we mounted our regulator. And here's our regulator mounted. This hole right here, it's already an existing hole, so I utilize that hole right there to pretty much line me up. And we'll take this bracket and put a slight radius on it so it'll follow the strut tower, and once we get it radiused out to where it needs to be, I'll mark that hole and then drill that one. And then that mounts our regulator right there. For innovations, they provide us with some 45 degrees. Normally there's straights there, but I use a 45 degree on that. And pretty much from the rail, back of the rail, is feeding regulator on this Gen 3. And then the return line right there is gonna literally follow that one and go back to the tank. Crossover line. The way I do this on the Gen 3s for the crossover line, I tend to trim the intake manifold right here to keep that nice clean look on with the straight fitting there. And literally that's your crossover line there. And it looks nice and clean from the front. You know, you don't have fuel lines routed everywhere or whatnot. This is a single regulator setup for our 900X. Works great. I've been using it all the time on that and no problems there. But yeah, so that's how we route that feed line to the back of this rail. And this is everything that 4 Innovations provide us with as far as fittings and lines go. That will be my main feed line there. And then this will be the return line. Battery's obviously not in it yet, but we'll route that power line there or that power cable there and go to the battery directly. Cover completely fits on there properly. And if it ever needs trimming, it's gonna be bare minimum, but this is pretty much how our kit is designed. You notice it goes right through the openings there, and everything underneath the car is covered. This is what I like about the stock K-Member. What do you think, Gunner? And there it is, boys. Up and running. We're draining the pump gas out of it now. But here's where we found our relay for the Scavenge pump. And here is the signal for the Scavenge pump. Ground right there. There's the power source fuel system. And that's about it. Simple install. First crank try. I mean, it all worked out really well. Not leaking, everything's working, not smoking. So we're good to go. Time to dyno. All right, boys. Boys and girls, I am finally on the way to the dyno with this car. Everything looks really good, really smooth. We've got a log or two back over to John to make sure everything's where it needs to be. And everything seems good. Just stopped and put some E85 in it. Just topped it off. We normally put ethanol in it, but ethanol, 10 gallons of ethanol, it still doesn't fill it up. So we went ahead and topped it off with just some pump. But yeah, man, the car's super smooth. Everything's working really well. Hopefully everything goes smooth at the dyno so we can get the car back to the customer. I leave town tomorrow, so I'm trying to get it done and back to him today, so hopefully all goes smooth. I'm excited. It'd be nice if it had good tire on it, but it doesn't. I mean, it has a good tire, but it's not something that's gonna hook or hold, 800-900 horsepower. So all right. No, sorry boys, we're about to lose camera. But here's this. I mean, super simple. 12.8 psi, made over 800 horsepower. To the wheels, it's nothing crazy. So here we go. We're gonna keep going. We're gonna put a little bit more in, a little bit more sauce in it, and see if we can make 900. Look at this beaut. Look at this beaut.